Hi, everyone. Hope everyone's doing well. This is the Canadian Foreign Policy Hour, which is a critical look at Canada's role abroad. I'm Eve Engler, coming to you from Jojage, which has long been a meeting place of various First Nations, otherwise known as Montreal. And I'll go right to it. Many developments. The straight group, I don't know how you pronounce it, light armored vehicle, Canadian-based firm that has operations in many countries, is apparently providing arms to the Rapid Support Forces in Sudan. That's fighting the military there. And I don't think either side is particularly a good side in the conflict, but the Rapid Support Forces, from what I can tell, are the worst side, and they've been supported by UAE, and Straight Group has significant operations there. Mining Watch has a letter signed by 283 organizations sent to the Canadian officials in Ecuador around Canadian companies, Silver Core, SVM, Salazar Resources, uh, around criminalizing land and water defenders. So some pushback on these Canadian mining companies, engagement or ties to repression. The the Anthony Fenton has a couple of posts that I came across on X this week about the Saudis mining industry holding a roundtable with some Canadian firms in Vancouver to discuss a big extraction plans there, which is supposed to go up to like 2.5 trillion, apparently, mining sector potential. And so there's this sort of outreach to Canadian companies in Vancouver. But in one of his posts, Fenton says that, it says, believe it or not, Canadian ties to Saudi mining industry trace back nearly a century. That's new. That's news to me. Fenton's doing I think a PhD in basically Canada-Saudi uh, ties, historic ties. So I very much assume what he's saying is correct. Um, and I don't know, obviously, all the details of his research, but what I've seen is that he's really shown how much deeper Canadian corporate and political ties to Saudi Arabia have been and are than is sort of widely understood. The Globe had a piece saying that the uh, corporate watchdog, the um, core Canadian I'm forgetting the exact what the acronym stands for, but it's supposed to be the corporate watchdog that came out of campaigning around the mining sector and Canadian mining abuses internationally, which is a very much watered down position that was created with very little power and basically been turned into a target China kind of body. It appears that it might be its future now looks uncertain. It hasn't had anyone in that position for I think a year. Um, and so this is just a total reversal on the Liberals' promise before 2015, and then they began the process and they actually put forward an okay proposal, and the mining industry lobbied hard, and then just watered it down, and now it's got to the point where it looks like it's just almost going to be completely scrapped. Very unfortunate. Really a sign of the power of the mining sector and corporate sector, despite campaigning, decades of campaigning from different grassroots groups, some NGOs, more establishment NGOs, and whatnot, not able to overcome the power, the lobbying, and other power of the mining sector, unfortunately. Uh, the Garda World, I did a piece about Garda World getting his contract a Montreal firm contracted for the so-called alligator Alcatraz detention facility in southern Florida that Trump and DeSantis and setting up to cage thousands of migrants. And it's surrounded by alligators. They're framing it as like part of the security or the way to keep people uh, locked up is that if they try to venture out, they get, I guess, eaten by alligators. Anyways, it's not exactly clear if this is just part of this sort of, I don't know, xenophobic, racist, Trump kind of anti-migrant stuff that that's actual or it's actually sort of like PR. But nonetheless, anyways, Garda got a 8 million US contract to provide armed guards. That got a bunch of media attention here in Quebec, where the provincial government invested 300 million in Garda a couple years ago, and I did a story, mostly just kind of regurgitating what I'd written previous about Garda in my number of different places. But uh, one thing that actually Dimitri Lascaris pointed out to me, which I didn't know, I didn't include in the article. Apparently, Garda now has a relationship with Palantir Technologies, an AI, controversial U.S. CIA American Trump aligned firm set up by Peter Thiel. And that's not in my article. That's interesting. Garda is a really odious company, totally tied to Canadian military and U.S. and British military in Afghanistan, in Iraq, in Libya. I go through that, and also has significant ties to sort of repressive anti-migrant policies in the U.S. In the looking at this, so Christian Paradis, who was a minister in the Harper government, he was on the board of Garda, and when I was going back and looking into Garda, and I punched his name, Paradis' name into Google, and what I came across, so Paradis is also on the board of CUSO. CUSO was Canadian. It used to be Canadian University Services Overseas. It's kind of like the founding NGO, and it's got it was really tied into the government, and government played a big role in establishing it. But there was a period in the in the 60s, late 60s, where CUSO became sort of somewhat radical. It was able to use the government funding and other kind of government supports and to become sort of challenge imperialism. And then that got reined in. There was really they cut back when they started bringing up the Palestine cause. The CUSO Quebec got its funding cut in the 70s, and then the English CUSO got reined in I think it was the late 80s, early 90s, when their education centers were more became sort of hubs of kind of critical thinking and education, and the government basically just chopped their money in response. And but what was fascinating about this is that on CUSO's site they list the fact that Christian Paradis is on their board, and that in of itself, to sit on the board of Garda, this Canada's biggest private security company, well, one of the world's biggest privately held private security company, 120,000 employees, kind of like Canada's Blackwater. But on CUSO's website, they list that he's also on Garda's board or has been on Garda's board. So, which to me, it's like this is now where the NGO world is like, they literally like list that their board members also sit on like Canadian mercenary companies boards. I mean, it's kind of remarkable that it's remarkable they would have him on the board, but that you could, okay, he was a former minister, you want powerful people on your board and whatever. But the fact that you list that he's also got these ties to Garda is just like they don't see themselves in sort of in any way as challenging Canada's arms industry, or in this case private security company. It's pretty bad comment on where the politics of CUSO are, which is, I think, quite widely reflected in the NGO world, which is really tamed by its dependence on government funding and whatnot. There's a push, Toronto has a push for the Carney to suspend its loan to BC Ferries for purchase of Chinese ships. That issue continues to get attention. I've talked about that in previous episodes, all part of this anti-China kind of hysteria. The Canadian forces are going to be participating in the US-led Talisman Sabre with Australia and Papua New Guinea beginning on July 13 for a couple weeks. Big war game, and that's in large part a target China kind of war exercise. There's the climate. There's all kinds of examples of this week of the climate crisis worsening. One story says there's 90 million people in Eastern and Southern Africa facing extreme hunger after record-breaking drought. And the Financial Times had a big they on the I don't know what you the page before their op-ed page, they usually devote to one theme. And the theme, the headline was Canada's bid to become an energy superpower. I think it was in Thursday's Financial Times. And it goes through just sort of like it's big, long, like 4,000 word kind of article. And it goes through Carney's pro oil, but more beyond just oil, but generally fossil fuel, um, um, different fuels. And and in this story, there's a quote they have from Carney that maybe I had seen elsewhere, I didn't remember. He says he's in justifying Canada's, focus on more uh, oil and extracting energy sources that are generally heavy greenhouse gas emitting. He says the world's certainly more divided and dangerous, and the imperative of making Canada an energy superpower in all respects has never been greater. Um, it's just this is the this basically, this hyping up of conflict with China or Russia, and so we have to justify uh, um, ensuring that what is already going to be and is a climate crisis gets even worse, which is essentially what Carney is saying, and how this kind of goes forward with very little pushback. I find it's just the geopolitics, the sort of agreed upon geopolitics in Canada that China, Russia, which is what is being stated there, implied there, are this threat to Canada. It's quite remarkable how widespread that is. And so there's a story in La Presse, kind of a similar direction, that's got some fascinating number about what we're going to be spending per person. It's going to be up to $4,700 per person in military spending, including obviously babies and every single Canadian. And and in this story, which is, the interesting kind of number breakdowns of what the 5% GDP to military and associated initiatives target is, the reporter, he kind of breaks this down and sort of says, wow, this is huge amount of money and this and that. And then he throws in this paragraph towards the bottom that basically just justifies it all, right? So it's like you can break it down and make it seem really kind of quite a scary objective to raise, but then you have to basically give the geopolitical justification. It's not like he doesn't say someone said this. He just pushes in, adds a paragraph, says, Oser les dépenses militaires est devenu nécessaire devant la menace de la Russie. Les volontés de Pékin en mer de Chine méridionale, la guerre en Israël et les propos belliqueux de Donald Trump, entre autres. So basically, we have to increase military spending because of Russia, China, Israel's war, and Trump's threats. And this is just all like stated kind of matter of factly. And we can discuss a little bit about, I don't know why necessarily we'd be increasing military spending because of Israel's genocide in Gaza, considering the fact that the Canadian military has been supporting Israel's genocide in Gaza. Um, but the China and Russia parts it's just like totally accepted. No one even questions the fact that obviously China is a danger to us. Obviously Russia is a danger to us. It's just absolutely sort of accepted. And and so we're just doing this path. And there's a bunch of stories this week, more stories that get into, what this military spending actually means. And it's just, they're stunning numbers. One story says, it should be noted, Canada spent 1.9% of GDP on defense in the period 1975 to 1984. Yet now we have promised to spend 5%, more than two and a half times what we spent at the height of the Cold War, right? So during the Cold War, where there was like sort of very formal different blocks, and obviously Russia was much more powerful than it is, we're going to spend way more. People talk about the Russian threat. Russia spends 150 billion on its military. Just Germany and UK combined spend 160 and a bit. They're both around 80 billion each. France is something like 65. There was the numbers that came out this week. So NATO spends dropping the US. Let's act like the US isn't part of NATO. Just the other NATO countries, they're more militarily advanced, certainly combined, than Russia is, and yet there's just this huge push to just keep spending more and more in the military. And the Globe has a piece on Saturday, has a piece on Saturday that talks to this guy Wenwork, I think his name. I quote his name in my story that I published today. Um, uh, and he's suggesting a 2% um, uh, military sales tax. So basically, the GST was at 7%. I think it was Harper that cut that back. Now it's down to 5. And basically adding 2 points, that's all devoted to the military. And he's like, we can make it like associated. This is like we can be patriotic in paying those extra 2 points on every good because it's going to be devoted explicitly to a military and defending our homeland and all that kind of that's the framing he's putting in it. He points out that without something like this, we're talking about the next 6 or 7 budgets that being made the central kind of factor in trying to balance the budget or how to navigate is this military increase, which makes total sense. He says it's going to be a top item in the next couple elections. In this story, there's a story. I'm not sure if it's him that there's a different individual who's suggesting ways to deal with the paying these costs. And one of them is he's calling imagine a new series of Canadian sovereignty bonds that he calls it circulating, or even something cheekier such as elbow up bonds. The idea is to invite Canadians to lend to their own government for a clearly defined mission, defending our sovereignty and meeting our global commitments. This is beyond hilarious. I mean, calling them elbow up bonds, it's like literally Donald Trump is demanding we spend a whole bunch more in the military. And this guy is saying what we should call these bonds to do what Donald Trump wants is the elbow up bonds. I mean, it's just it's a comedy. These people, I mean, I can say it over again. It gets pushed back and even in lots of leftist spaces, but the Canadian military is not uh, oriented towards defending Canada from the US. I had a long argument with a friend this week when Fur came into town, where he's kind of making the leftist argument. Cuba has lots of, spends lots on its military. And so if we were going to really have a socialist movement, we can end up having to, have a military that can defend us from the US and the efforts to, attack us, overthrow us. And like that's obviously all like theoretically true. It just doesn't really have anything to do with Canada here and now, and doesn't have anything to do with how the Canadian military is currently structured. So you can make a case to disband the current Canadian military and build up a force that is sort of, let's call it like a guerrilla-oriented force to protect from any potential U.S. invasion. But in the here and now, in my opinion, those arguments, the left argument on this Trump, the pro-military is just basically ends up being pro-military. You sort of can come up with a sort of left, okay, we're going to spend military to defend ourselves from Trump's annexation threats, while our military is clearly just totally pro-US, and is Trump's asking us to spend more on the military. And there's a piece that Tamara Lawrence sent me from the Kitchener paper that I wasn't able to read the full thing. I just the photo she sent me that was on the front page, and it's the vice command David Massour. He's about to retire, Canadian top naval officer, and he's about to retire, and he's been given he's the vice commander of the U.S. Second Fleet starting in a couple weeks, and so he's basically been number two in charge of the whole U.S. Navy in the Atlantic region, all the way down to the Caribbean, and and he's quoted in this, and he's like he's important because he has to take off his Canada hat, and he's going to remember he's got his it's just going to be his U.S. hat, and he's not really going to be a Canadian, he's just going to be a U.S. officer. And this is like, we're in the elbows up time, we're in this whole U.S. is going to annex us, and Canadian top naval officers are becoming second in charge. I think he said, like, I don't know, 10,000, huge number of U.S. Naval personnel that he'll be in charge of, and this is just all kind of like, so they didn't even do that. It's a simple thing. We did an email alert around that a couple months ago, around withdrawing all the Canadians that are currently in U.S. international deployments as part of the sort of elbows up that Mark Carney is talking about. Like, that's at minimum, just bring them home and put a pause on these exchanges and other kind of Canadian international deployments. And none of this has happened. It's just continuing as everything's as usual, and it's yeah. So this business of the Canadian military is defending us from the U.S. is not based in fact. Um, Obviously, it's theoretically possible, but it's not what's actually happening. But we're pumping a bunch of money into the military, sort of in part with that argument being kind of presented by some of these pro-military people. And actually, in my conversation that I had with a friend, um, I pointed out to him that there's no one that's there's a whole defund the police, right? There's a movement that, raising that. There's no one that talks about defunding the Canadian military. And I would argue that it's actually more socially useful to defund the military than to defund the police. Certainly in the short and medium term. I mean, I think in both cases you want to defund them, and these are institutions that you want to have the least of in the policing domain. Obviously, I think in the here and now, police do obviously provide some socially useful functions. But as an objective that is direction, and certainly you want to move resources as much as possible towards housing, to different types of intervention, to avoiding criminality or whatnot. But anyway, so there's in my opinion, there's a much stronger argument to move rapidly on defunding the military than there is on the policing front. But no one mentions that. Not even, I mean, basically hardly any peace groups even mention that. And so I just find it fascinating to hear a friend making these arguments that are effectively just become leftist arguments for this really deep militarist culture that we have that spans the political spectrum. On the note of the elbows up question, there's people posting about how the U.S. flag's flown at Ottawa City Hall on July 4th. Lloyd Axworthy is accusing Carney of bootlicking approach to Trump, which is clearly the case. It's just, the rhetoric, the okay kind of critical rhetoric that Carney was putting forward during elections. I mean, it's all out the window, and it's all about, doing the most to whatever Trump wants. Sometimes repackaging it, but that's the overarching policy direction. Uh, On Palestine, there's a Hebrew University poll showing 82% of Jewish Israelis agree that basically there are no innocents in Gaza. Um, just another poll, just how off the charts Jewish Israeli public opinion is. This week, the Maple reported that in February, Canada authorized 37.2 million in permits, arms permits, to Israel. Export category includes bombs, rockets, and other explosive devices. Uh, the former head of Amnesty Canada, I'm forgetting his name right now, blanking on his name. He posted, hoping to hear from Anita Anand as to what possible reason led Canada to not join 50 countries at UN Human Rights Council, expressing support for International Criminal Court in face of odious threats and sanctions related to court's crucial Palestine case. Part of the resolution says, as state parties to the Rome Statute of the International Criminal Court, we uphold that the court, its officials, and staff shall carry out their professional duties without intimidation. So Canada is not even willing to support this, obviously mostly symbolic, indirect criticism of Trump on on the ICC. Uh, there's a stuff about this story in the CBC and posted a couple places about academics calling for just the Canadian government's approval. These Palestinians in Gaza who've gotten different gotten into Canadian universities, sometimes got bursaries and whatnot. Uh, they've just been languishing. A number of them been killed now, languishing in Gaza, and the federal government's just taking their time, sweet time with the visas, and a couple of them have been killed, and so there's some pressure on that issue, and there's going to be, I think I saw there's going to be some sort of encampment that's beginning, I believe. I think the date I saw was like July 13th on this issue to press the immigration minister to speed up the this question and not have more Palestinians who have been okay to come to Canada, who've got into Canadian universities from being killed while they wait for visas. And a couple of sort of positive kind of sides on the Palestine question this week. The Islamophobia special envoy Amira Al-Jabawabi, uh, she met with Carney, and she brought up anti-Palestinian racism, anti-Palestinianism, um, which I think is good that she's able to get a meeting with Carney. I mean, it's obviously not doing that much, but the small positive. The RCMP canceled its event with B'nai B'rith that was supposed to be on July 2nd with this assistant commissioner to discuss the structural investigation into the Israel-Hamas conflict, which was totally outrageous that the RCMP would have this event with B'nai B'rith, who's like basically is trying to assuage the the criminals who have been violating Canada's War Crimes and Crimes Against Humanity Act. And so I think it's because of some pressure on social media I'm guessing the RCMP pulled out of this. There's David Maastricht posted about his Find IDF Soldiers, and his site about 165 Canadians who fought in the Israeli military, where his information on, and he says a bunch of the links are starting to disappear. I think I mentioned that the Kitchener City News Kitchener deleted two stories about a former Israeli soldier um, on on this question. Uh, last um, I don't know if I mentioned last week or not, but so City News Kitchener deleted two stories, which is a little bit mysterious, breaks their rules about Canadians who've been fighting in the Israeli military, and he says that a number of sites that are like that the individuals have maybe some control over. I think someone has unmuted themselves. I think I might not have blocked the unmute. Let's see if I can do that now after the fact. Okay, I think I've done it. Um, the so it appears that some of these soldiers now that were previously boasting about fighting the Israeli military, they seem now to be trying to sort of scrub some of their online profile about fighting in the Israeli military, which is not a big victory, of course, but I think it speaks to the fact maybe some people are starting to realize that there's a lot of people don't like this. Maybe they're starting to get a little bit nervous about being prosecuted. Um, anyway, so I think that's a small positive. There was an action at Anita Anand's office with wallpaper all over her office. Uh, Canada is still arming Israel. MP Anand can stop the flow of weapons today. Arms embargo now. Bravo to them. There was a fair bit of media about the Caisse de dépôt, the pension fund here in Quebec, and the special rapporteur Albanese accusing the case of supporting a genocide. That got quite a bit of attention. They had an action on the 1 year anniversary of their encampment, which wasn't able to go on Saturday, but they had an.
Thank you for supper.
Somebody's unmuted, and I can't. If you can
Oh,
try to make sure you're muted. I can't. I forgot to block everyone from unmuting themselves at the start. Apologies. Um,
It's Marie. Marie, great. Thank you.
and um, on the repressive side, on the less positive side, the Tynan Liebert with the Communist Workers Circle in Toronto, CUPE activist, is being charged two charges this week. He's going to court. There's a rally, I think it's tomorrow morning, and then another something they're doing a press thing on the 10th, pushing back against these trumped up charges around an event that he was protested Chrystia Freeland on Palestine. Here in Montreal, the SPVM, the Davide, forgetting his last name, fairly prominent on social media, he got charged I think it's a good year ago now on he said something like let's email, fax, phone call Immigration Minister Miller's office, let's really blow it up, something like that. But like the language is pretty clear. I mean, he used the word blow it up, but it's like pretty clear he means like let's blow it up in the sense of let's deluge them with emails and faxes and phone calls, not in the sense of like dynamite. And so he had this, and it was a big. They pursued it, and then they seem to have sort of dropped it or whatever. Anyways, now they seem to have brought it back against him, and he's being charged. He's got an interesting post, and I think he's correct about just the police um, doing this, and I do sort of even wonder how much the police are keen on doing this, and how much they just feel under pressure to do these kind of ridiculous uh, repression on Palestine. On the note of the repression on Palestine, so the National Post had a column where they referred to the Palestinian youth movement as, quote, an effective proxy for the Iranian regime, which we know what they mean, that's basically setting up to have PYM trying to list it as a terror organization, which is clearly what some of the Zionists want. On the front page of Thursday's National Post, they had this piece about Samidun and Palestinian Political Prisoners Network, which was, of course, listed 8 or 9 months ago, 10 months ago, exactly. Totally outrageous, of course, that they were listed as a terrorist organization, grassroots group, and and they they basically calling for their arrest. They're calling for Charlotte Kate's, Khalid Barakat's arrest. And it's like nothing. I mean, it's just totally over the top, open. I mean, really, these people they hate us for our liberties, right? The Zionist forces really do hate basic civil liberties, and it's just remarkable to see how open they are with this repressive attitude. And there's, obviously a lot of this is all justified under the lens of combating anti-Semitism or discrimination, whatever. They frame their pro-genocide stuff from that lens and their repression from that lens. But the editor of commentary, forgetting his name, I don't know him much, but commentary is some right wing, I think very pro-Zionist publication in the States, and I see him quite a bit on Twitter, all kinds of over the top. And so he kind of like admits what we know that the most of the Zionist movement has to say, on the basically they go on and on about anti-Semitism, but they could care less about anti-Semitism. They just care about defending Israel. And what he posts is so apparently Trump said Shylock, referred to Shylock bankers, which I actually didn't know this sort of anti-Semitic kind of trope, and it has to do with the in the Merchant of Venice. It's a Jewish banker and is portrayed as usury and like a pound of flesh apparently comes out of this. I'm not I haven't actually read the Merchant of Venice. I'm not familiar with the, but anyways, so I saw the word Shylock used by Trump and someone posting about it, and I punched into Google, searched it. Anyway, so what he posts, this editor of commentary says Trump bombed Iran. He can say Shylock 100 times a day forever, as far as I'm concerned. So he's really just really clear. Trump can make anti-Semitic reference, and I don't care so long as he supports Israel's domination of the region. This is essentially what the guy's saying. And this is obviously what goes through in the head of Netanyahu and all kinds of other, Zionists. But usually they're not so bold and crass in saying that publicly. But here we have it. And on the note of the repression, um, so the Bob Vylan performance at Glastonbury last weekend, uh, it obviously was a big deal, and the I think maybe I talked about this last week. I'm not sure, but Housefather, CJ, they all came out calling for Bob Vylan to be him to be blocked from coming to Canada. And Housefather was interesting on that, and Kneecap. The Kneecap should also be blocked from coming performing, and or to Canadians from blocked from able to view their performance. And uh, um, what was interesting, I think, about Housefather is he was explicit that we should follow the Trump administration in doing this, which for a liberal MP who's supposedly like elbows up, Trump administration, this and that, the fact that he's willing to be so like it's one thing to call for the repression, that wouldn't have surprised me, but to state it so explicitly of let's follow Trump administration in doing that repression, that I thought was a little bit surprising. Now, in response to all this stuff online on X, I posted a bunch of places, um, uh, death to the IDF, or death to IOF, or variations of that. And so the Leviathan account then posts of me tweeting this, and then of previous posts I've made where I talk about how the find IDF soldiers, there's these former Israeli soldiers in Canada, and they basically try to say, well, I'm saying death to the IDF. So what I'm actually calling for is Israeli soldiers or Canadians who fought in the Israeli military who are in Canada to be killed. That's essentially what they're trying to do. And then they tagged the Montreal police, and they actually tagged 4 different police department accounts in one of their tweets. Okay, so they get this going. And then this publication, the J, which is this Jewish Zionist, hardline Jewish Zionist publication, posts a story saying Montreal author under police review after IDF posts raise hate speech concerns. Eve Engler's death to IDF remarks prompt law enforcement scrutiny and public criticism amid rising tensions. Now, what? I'm presuming happened here. So they begin with the Leviathan, and then they take it one step further, which is I presume, call the Montreal police. Maybe they made it all up, but probably they actually did it. They call the Montreal police and they say, well, there's these online people saying that he called death to the IDF, and this is and saying this is hate speech. And are you going to look into it? And presumably, the Montreal police officer that gets the phone call says, some variation of, yeah, we'll look into it. And then they take that, of course, and then they say there's a law enforcement scrutiny, right? Like, obviously, if you're a police officer, particularly on this issue, they frame it as hate crime, whatever. Obviously, the police is going to try to act like they are, taking it seriously. And so, but then so then this publication frames it as like I'm being investigated in Montreal police. And then the Canadian Anti-Semitism Education Foundation goes one step further, and they send a letter to the Montreal police, and they bring in a few other posts to start off with the death to the IDF, and they bring in some other posts, and they're basically like, I'm, trying to have Israeli soldiers killed. Uh, and they're just openly saying the Montreal police need to, you know, jail me for tweeting in response to Housefather and the others, death to the IDF. And now, of course, if you really sit and think about it, of course, death to the IDF is really is like an anti-war, anti-genocide chant, right? I mean, uh, like it's a military, committing an endless stream of massacres that clearly needs to be stopped. um, and so the whole framing of this as being like violence and all this kind of stuff is pretty remarkable. And of course, I don't deny in any way that I support Israelis resistance, killing Israeli soldiers in Gaza. Obviously, that has to be supported. You don't like it in an abstract, humanistic way, of course. I don't want anyone killed, even the worst of the worst, right? But in a practical, what's going to stop this genocidal force from stopping the killing machine? Unfortunately, I don't, moral appeals don't seem to be working too well. Um, so it is what it is. The Now, I guess maybe just to finish off. So today we did a press conference around the NDP leadership bid. I posted about it on Sunday. Quite a bunch. The reaction is pretty intense. A lot of positive, also a lot of negative. I find it fascinating to see. You can see my piece on my site about the reasons for doing it. I mean, it's a bit more like um, uh, clearer. I mean, it's more or less what I talked about last week, but a bit more sort of clear and flushed out in different areas. And obviously, there's a lot more flushing out that needs to come on all this. And it's really about the Canada's complicity in the Holocaust in Gaza, and in some ways, even more importantly, the this notion of giving the monsters who've been supporting this enabling this Holocaust even more weapons, cut social programs to give them even more capacity to unleash violence internationally. And the fact that I think particularly well placed, knowledge wise and credibility wise, to take on those two issues. Um, and One of the things I find interesting in this, I said this to some people privately before when I was thinking about all this. You know, to me, the hardline Jewish supremacists are all just they're not thinking in their attacks. They're attacking. They're all over the top. They're calling for, like, if he was to win the leadership, the NDP should become a banned terrorist organization. There's a poll on Twitter asking that question, and others making variations of that. It's just like totally over the top. And to me, it's just simply dumb. It's a dumb strategy because it's the better strategy is to try to ignore, the media ignored all, the far right pro-Israel forces to ignore it all, but they're whipping themselves up, and they're whipping themselves up in a direction where I think we might see a situation where the more thinking pro-Israel groups like CIJA feel under pressure to start coming out publicly and saying that I should be barred from being able to run. And I mean, to me, that's just it's not a smart strategy. Obviously, there's lots of forces within the NDP structure that we're going to try, don't want me to run. They're going to try to pull off different efforts to block it. I don't think those forces within the NDP, in some weird ways, it might make it more difficult for them to act if it's getting really publicly pushed by the extremist Zionist forces. But they can't. They are. I don't think they're acting in a thinking way. They're acting with we have one method. It's just suppress, 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 repress, 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 denounce. Oh, anti-Semite. Oh, anybody who stands up. And I think that like as a general tactic, that has served pro-Israel forces well. But I think sometimes it's more they better suit themselves to be a bit more discerning in how to use that tactic. And again, I think there actually are. I've said, this is a serious long shot. The principal objective, realistic objective, is to build a team of volunteers and people campaigning and register a couple thousand people maybe to impact the debate within this leadership race. That's the principal realistic objective. The kind of long shot victory kind of direction is if the pro-Israel forces lose themselves in denunciation and give all kinds of attention to the campaign, but for some reason, and there's all kinds of potential possibilities, very unlikely, but potential possibilities, they're not able to force the NDP to bar the candidacy. And so, because I think there are 50,000 people that would become NDP members basically just to give an FU to CJ, right? I think they are. I think that exists in the Canadian public. Obviously, it's almost impossible to reach those people and get those people motivated and whatever. The only force that can really do that is CJ working with the National Post and their other corporate media and their allies. And I so far in the first 48 hours in this kind of becoming more public, they are whipping themselves up in a way that I don't think is again, I think the better strategy is just try to ignore. We'll see where all this goes. I'll leave it at that, and I'll make Laura a co-host if yeah.
Okay, I am. Go ahead, Hans. Hans, can you please unmute? Go ahead.
I think I am unmuted. Well, I think that very positively of this announcement today. This, for me, is the big news of your candidacy. And I look forward to it channeling your quote unquote notoriety clearly onto the political plane. One aspect I look forward to clearly in your campaign is to highlight the democratic deficit that exists within the present NDP. Sherry DeNova, one time MPP in Ontario, threw a balance sheet that said the party is no longer new, it's not democratic, and nobody's having a party. Yesterday, at its federal council meeting, the party brass had difficulty and, in fact, failed to ram through its very restrictive set of rules as to govern this leadership race. So there are clear fragments within, there are cracks within the structure. One example, a year ago, over a year ago now, in 1 week, in fact, into October 7th, at the federal convention of the NDP, I successfully defeated a constitutional amendment that would have empowered the federal office to, in fact, place riding associations under trusteeship, the way some American union bosses have been doing to locals here in Canada. So that clearly indicates following on the wake of the Sarah Jama debacle, Rima Burns McGowan, Jewish MPP, getting driven out of the party, and Angelina Appadurai making a very successful challenge for the premiership of BC by enlisting over 13,000 new members. There is music in them there hills. There is a hell of a lot of disenchantment. There is also disaffection, but there can be a lot of rekindling to be done. And I fully endorse Eve's call for all of us to take out membership in the party, to give this unique opportunity all the energy, all the support that we can muster. I think this is one of the most exciting developments in the Canadian left. So all power to us and to Eve Engler.
Thanks, Hans. Thanks so much. Go ahead, Yuri.
Well, just sort of to kind of continue what Hans was saying. First off, Eve, I'm really excited about about your campaign. I personally think even if it is a long shot, I think if you're able to just run in the race, and if you end up getting second place, third place, even arguably fourth place, I think that shows that there is a real hunger for people who want the truth about Canada being told to them, and there is a real hunger for radical politics. I think kind of just like, Dimitri, when he ran for the Green Party and he wound up second place, it'll create quite a rumble and hopefully, galvanize, the movement and make fringe ideas, which shouldn't be fringe, but anti-imperialist ideas, hopefully much more mainstream. I'm much more interested. I'm not really, I don't give a shit, if the National Post attacks you. I am, though, and I think all of us should be much more curious about how left-leaning media responds to you, the unions, and folks, who are, and I don't mean this as an insult, but those who are sort of like, lefty celebrities and so forth. I'm more curious in how they respond to you, if they're either going to be supportive of you or try to sabotage you. So I think that should be very interesting. So I think that's we should kind of monitor that and watch that. And yeah, just two quick things regarding Shylock. I happen to have seen a movie adaptation of The Merchant of Venice with Jeremy Irons and Al Pacino, and I'll just quickly say this. So Shylock is a loan shark. He's a Jewish loan shark, and this is historical fact. During the Renaissance in 16th century Italy, Jews were forced to live in ghettos. They needed permission to leave the ghettos, to wear a hat or something. And the play, to a degree, it does speak out on institutional anti-Semitism. Others think that it engages in anti-Semitism and so forth. But I still think that even Trump using the term Shylock, which is something that even the mob, Jewish mobsters and like Sicilian, Italian American mobsters and their Canadian counterparts, they often use that term just as like a reference to the fact that that's loan shark right there. So I still look, Trump is an asshole, but I still don't even think that what he was saying was him engaging in anti-Semitism. And last thing I want to ask you about, but you don't have to respond to it because there's other people who want to ask questions, is I'm curious what you think of what's going on in Sudan, and do you think that the horrendous civil war that we see in North Sudan and the fighting that we see in South Sudan? Is that Western imperialists just supporting all sides, just like what happened in the Iran-Contra scandal when America supplied weapons to Saddam, but also weapons to the Islamic Republic, supporting both sides because it just benefits the West when you have an African country and several African countries in the continent unstable because the gangsters, which are Western imperialists, get to make off like bandits with whatever. And yeah, curious
Yeah,
response.
I mean, I don't know well enough. My sense is that the Washington doesn't care much either side, and what they care about they don't want the popular forces that were unleashed a couple years ago, to sort of win and take over. That's my sense, but I don't really know. And obviously, there's different companies and whatever making money from the weapons. I don't fully understand the UAE's geopolitical interest in backing the RSF, but yeah.
Okay, go ahead, Philip.
Yeah, so the NDP run for leadership, is there a convention, a date for this happening? And also, um, if we join the NDP, do we join like I'm joining in, I'm supporting Eve Engler, or do you just join?
Yeah, the rules haven't been set yet for the leadership race. As Hans talked about yesterday there was a meeting that there was a pushback on the rules. So there's lots of dissent internally within the sort of party hierarchy. Uh, the in terms of once the rules are set and the people should wait to become members to there's a formal process of or there has been previously of you become a member associated with the campaign is how I understand it. So at a certain point, if they allow my candidacy, and they may well, or I would say more than may well, but there's a decent chance they might block it, then assuming they allow it and the financial threshold, the idea, what they're trying to do is to constrain the race by having a really high fee to enter, right? So now it looks like it's going to be between 50,000 and $100,000, and so that's going to be the way to like constrain the process, other mechanisms. But so. Yeah, at that point would be where when people take out memberships associated with the campaign. But we don't really know when the it's going to formally start at this point. It's being pushed back because of dissension internally.
Eve, just before we go to Blair, on the note you just mentioned, so if they have this 50 or 100,000 fee, I mean, are you going to have to try to raise that?
Yeah.
Oh,
Yeah.
that's a lot.
Yeah. So we'll
Okay,
see
Blair.
how that goes. But
Okay, go ahead, Blair.
Hey Eve, hello from the Maritimes. Hope you're doing well. Thanks for the great news. I'm just curious, are you planning to run for the House of Commons, whether you win or lose the leadership race?
I'm not planning on running the House of Commons if I don't win. I would.
What if
I
you did really well
I guess
but came second?
I could consider that. But yeah, I mean I could consider that. But in as of now, no. Now I
Yeah,
don't know when if did win the leadership. I don't know when. That probably wouldn't be until sometime early next year. I don't know. Would
right. Yeah, the
probably the effort would be to try to figure out a way of getting to run fairly soon, but there'd be
yeah.
lots of variables that would come up in that discussion.
Is the NDP a viable party in your riding?
I Nima Machouf came second to Stéphane Guilbeault's riding, and uh, she came second. She did better last time than this time. it was a real campaign. It was the former foreign affairs critic. I'm totally blanking on her name right now, who was in this riding before Guilbeault. Anyway, I forget her. She went to AIPAC and the Jewish National Fund when she was in Israel. She was a former employee at Global Affairs Canada. Um, so they have won this riding. I think it's Montreal doesn't tend to be NDP territory, but Alexandre Boulris has a seat. Um, yeah, that would be defeating. That would be kind of quite fun to go up against Stephen Guilbeault, but defeating Guilbeault would be fairly difficult one, I think.
Um, just one last little aside. They might be like, oh, well, you're not in the House of Commons, and like use that as a talking point against your candidacy. And just for you, just in case you didn't know, Alexa McDonough, Jack Layton, Jagmeet Singh, and even Tommy Douglas all were not in Parliament when they ran, and then they all got their seats afterwards. So just a little thought for when you get that flung your way.
Yeah, thanks.
Go ahead, Gregory.
Well done, Yves. Thank you. I think I haven't been this excited about Canadian politics since Dimitri ran for the Green Party. So I think it's a real leadership thing. And Jagmeet, after the lame leadership that he provided, it was just embarrassing. He had an issue in the Palestinian issue to run with, and I think the party would not have crashed had he taken it on full force. And I think you're taking on Canada's militarism, NATO, all of these things actually enhance democracy in Canada. So I just want to thank you. I will support you in any and every way possible. I will send you donations. Go for it, brother. I'm on your side. I love it. Thank you. Just a comment, brother.
Thanks.
Thanks, Gregory. I think a lot of us feel that way. Um, Lex, there was someone before Lex, but then they disappeared. Go ahead, Lex, please. Lex, you are unmuted, I guess, so go ahead. For some reason we can't hear you, so even though it appears that you're unmuted. Okay, well, we'll go ahead. Nadia, can you please unmute?
Yes, thank you. I just wanted to say thank you, Yves. And as for the army saving us from the US, those people who think so, this is totally ridiculous because they're so tied in together, you can't separate them. First of all, those new airplanes that they're buying from the US, they can't fly them without the permission of the U.S. Army, the U.S. Defense. So it's ridiculous. Every part of our security is tied in with the American security. We're so tied in together. If there's anyone we should fear, it's the United States that we should fear of attacking us. I mean, the other thing I wanted to say is, as for Shylock, I taught The Merchant of Venice for years and years in high school. I know it almost by heart, but I used to teach it from the point of view of Shylock, who makes the beautiful plea. I urge everyone to go and look at it. Portia, the one who was defending Antonio, the lawyer, he was trying to defend himself as a Jew, and then I get jitters. I get when I think of that beautiful passage when he says, "Aren't we human like you? Don't we feel pain like you? Don't we eat like you? Don't we live like you? And if you hurt us, don't we reply? Don't we?" So I teach it from the point of view of human suffering and what the Jews have gone through throughout the ages of being discriminated against and so on. So that's all I wanted to say. Thank you.
Thanks, Nadia. Go ahead, Catherine.
Yeah, thanks everybody, and thanks Yves for for being willing to run, and I'm looking forward to it. Like, and echo a lot of the other comments. Um, uh, I just on the Shylock story, Walter Borden played Shylock in Merchant of Venice once, and I remember he talked on the radio about it and said that he'd been criticized as a black actor for playing Shylock, and he said it's really how it's done. So that was his point of view about it. And I just one quick question. I'm going to be in Montreal on the August 3rd in the afternoon, and just wondering if there's any protests or events that would be great to come to. If something comes up, I'd really like to hear about it. We'll be there for about 4 hours.
I don't know. I don't know at this time, but maybe message me like a couple days before and a better sense. Usually the demos are kind of announced fairly last minute or a week before kind of thing. So
Okay, Lex, are you able to speak now? I see your message in the chat. Are you able to speak in the way we can hear you? No, for some reason. Okay, so in the chat, you say my questions are about Cullen saying there should be no convention. And how about the upcoming court date?
yeah, well, obviously the no. I mean, I think there's a big part of the NDP leadership that just wants to avoid conventions all the time. Uh, my court date is July 14th. It's just going to be a date to set up a date, and I presume it's going to happen sometime in October, November, but I don't really know. Yeah.
Okay, so my last question is, sir, what we can do to support you now is you would like us all, just to be correct, at this time to join the party or to wait
No,
till?
no, to wait till there's the formal process because my understanding is you join kind of like associated with the campaign.
Mm-hmm.
In case of people here, mostly at this point, what I want to do is compile emails of people who want to support in one way or another. And then once things really get going, both there's the Socialist Caucus is doing has a meeting on July 13th to set up some of the positions to, campaign positions. And
Mm-hmm.
we need to get some of the, campaign manager, get a few things like that kind of in order, communications team, that stuff. And so if there's people who are interested in being part of that, people could participate in the July 13th meeting and or email me and I can forward it along to Barry and others. Yeah.
Are you going to have a website or something where
Yeah,
people?
there's a website, vote Eve for NDP leader. It's up there
Oh,
now. It's not much on it right now, but it's just uh it's just getting going, so people can check
okay.
that
So
out.
basically, what you're saying is people should just email you to say what they might like to do to support you or to ask you any questions of what they can do. Is that correct?
Yeah, and this July 13th meeting would be if people are keen on taking up some positions in terms of the actual campaign, that would be good as well. But yeah,
Okay, and that's on your website, is it? The July
no, I don't actually have that info on my website. Actually, probably the best thing is to email me, and I'll either respond directly or forward the email on to Barry, who will then pass on the proper information.
Okay, great. Okay, good. Well, thanks very much, Eve.
Thanks, everyone. Take
Thank
care.
you. Bye all.